So what's driving China? Why has China got an axe to grind with Israel?
Okay, first of all, I hope that you show that the internet is working properly because it keeps disappearing. That
Yes,
said, that said, Google the Road and Belt Initiative. Most, again, even so-called experts have never heard about it. Road
it's the
and Belt
ports.
Initiative is reviving the Silk Trade Road for China and reviving another trade route that would literally, control trade around the universe. It passes around the Middle East, and in order for that to happen, the Middle East cannot be stable. I think strategic. I think looking from above, the pilot eye they call it, rather than people who just go down the weed into grassroots details. When you think strategic, the biggest problems we hear are posed in the Chinese initiative, the Road and Belt, is first those countries have to be unstable to be controlled, and China dictates and sustains its dominance. And also those countries who are in within the route of the road, the Silk Road and Belt initiatives, they have to be under total Chinese control. In addition to the threat that Israel by on itself poses for China, the threats are the following. One is Gaza. Many people do not understand that Gaza is exactly the point, the nail connecting the map of Europe, Asia, and Africa altogether. So this is the most difficult spot in the universe, Gaza. If that place is stable, those three continents would stabilize. In military science, and you can ask anyone from West Point or the war colleges, that there's something called the point of gravity. The point of gravity of the world, the entire world, is the Middle East. The point of gravity in the Middle East is the Levant, Israel, Palestine, Palestinian Nashtachim, Palestinian areas, or all of Israel, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, and half of Iraq. Those are the Levant, the areas that actually dictate how what happens next. If those areas are stable, the whole world stabilizes. If that area is unstable, the whole world will live in the chaos and remains controllable by the evil forces. To make a long story short, because we're not here to talk strictly about China, much of what you see has been invoked by the Chinese. And I can tell you information which I know you won't find necessarily online, that when the IDF was storming Gaza using most advanced technology, they noticed jamming of their devices by what could have been either submarines, very advanced submarines, or satellite jamming Israeli devices. And I will leave your imagination to think who were the suspects behind that. No Arab country has that technology. So there are very few, like two suspects. The suspects were, and I can tell you what soldiers and generals have told me. The suspects were either China or Russia. So
So Mudar,
who
allow
could
me
it
to
be?
understand. So China has an interest in creating volatility in the Middle East, volatility in the Levant. Why wouldn't they just try to seduce Israel into their Silk Road like they do with all the other countries? Why would they want to have these countries at war with Israel?
Well, they've done a lot of good work trying to seduce Israel. 5 months ago, I was in Haifa. You go to the Haifa seaport, you will find, thanks to Hamas and the Houthis in Yemen. By the way, the Houthis are controlled by the Chinese too. This is
Mm.
not a theory. The Houthis have excellent relationship to the Chinese in Yemen. So they rendered the seaports for Israel unsafe, except for one, which is the Haifa seaport. So the Haifa seaport, you go there and you'll find two docks, two marinas where ships can dock. One is totally empty, and one is totally full and actually overcrowded with imported vehicles. Why is one of them is completely empty? China owns it, and Israel doesn't seem to want to use it. Doesn't want to give it to China. And I'm going to tell you stuff which will make a lot of people who ask questions. Do you remember in the past 15 years, up until 5 years ago, you would hear of Shmuley in some unknown hick town in Israel, 18-year-old. He invented some stupid, idiotic application of how to make, biscuits or something like that. And suddenly the application has been sold for $5 million. And people like, oh, yes, there's incredible innovation in Israel. But there was a point where China was basically China was drowned in Israel with its own investment of technology. Those investments were not because they love Israeli technology. Trust me, they've stolen a lot of Israeli technology. They're using, and this is everything I'm telling you here now is stuff you will not find anywhere in public. A lot of the Israeli technology was stolen and used in Chinese fighter jets. This came from Israel. That said, it's stolen. They have not paid for it. At the same time, the reason they were buying those companies left and right, and I'm talking billions of dollars, is also to control certain people in Israel. They were not able to do it because Israel has one of the best intelligence apparatus in the world. They were simply not able to buy Israeli officials. Yes, there has been a few bad apples here and there, but you cannot buy the Israeli government the way you bought the Egyptian government. The Egyptian government was up until 6-7 years ago, all US all the way, USA all the way. Now it's Chinese. Jordan's king. Until recently, until like 15 years ago, he flipped into the Chinese side. And now, before we waste all of our time talking about China, this is not China, bro. This is a doctrine in the American establishment in Washington, the old establishment of empowering China at the expense of the United States. I'm talking George Bush Sr. This is not a conspiracy theory. You really need to just follow what they're doing. All these special, preferential trade deals for China, no tariff, even subsidizing freight. So basically, you're even imposing the stuff of subsidized freight for China. This is 30 years old now. This has been going on for 30 years until Trump stopped it. And this has been empowered by crazy maniacs, mishogas in DC, who simply believe that we need to empower China to create a global balance because the United States is, such a hateful country because the American people believe in them ruling, not the government, and also the American people have guns. So this is a very difficult country, very difficult people to control. Same applies to Israel. It's incredibly difficult to control the people of Israel. They're all soldiers. They're all trained. They know how to use weapons. If you want to press them against their will, you have to deal with them. So both Americans and Israelis are bad actors in their opinion. And those same people, I'm talking Bush Jr., Bush Sr., Cheney, Condoleezza Rice, and the Rumsfeld, all those usual suspects, they are the ones who empower China deliberately. And Trump was absolutely right, regardless of what you think of the man. It's American wealth that has been exported to China. So how does this relate to our discussion today? You bring a Palestinian Jordanian to talk about Palestine/Israel.
And we're talking about China.
Talking about China because it all begins at China and ends at China. Who thinks supported Hamas all that time? Who you think made it difficult to outdo Hamas for 20 years?
So you're saying that China is motivated by economical motivations?
No, world domination plus economic benefits.
World domination.